Hi, Jerry Corley here, standupcomedyclinic.com with another episode of Ask the Joke Doctor. In this episode, we're going to discuss an argument. Can you learn to be funny? Raise your hand if you're one of those people that doesn't think you can learn to be funny. Not that I could see your hand, but raise it anyway. You might get some blood flow going to your head, where you can learn that you could actually learn to be funny. There's actually techniques you can learn to be funny. But most people think, and it's not your fault because you're wrong, most people think that you can't learn to be funny. Even Jerry Seinfeld and Lucille Ball and a lot of legendary comedians think you either got it or you don't. My favorite line is you're born with it. Like babies are popping out of the womb going, hey, is this thing on? You call that a birth canal? You don't either got it or you don't. There is a vast array of techniques, styles, structures that you could use and apply to add humor to your everyday life. Now, the reason I started this with an argument is one of my teachers, we were doing a podcast together, one of my teachers actually said, well, sure, you could teach somebody the fundamentals of comedy writing, but you can't really teach somebody to be funny naturally. And I said, really? He said, well, take Will Ferrell, for example. He's just naturally funny. And I was like, well, depends on who you're talking to, because Holmes and Watson was such a hit, or Step Brothers was such a hit. It really does matter who the audience is, whether or not he is considered funny. And since both of those films were an absolute flop, I don't know whether or not I would say Will Ferrell is still funny to a lot of people. Same thing with Adam Sandler. I'm going to be doing a video soon on why do 50% of Adam Sandler's films fail. There's a reason why. And the reason why is what we're doing this video about. There are certain structures and applications you can use to really heighten the odds of a joke getting a laugh. So my argument with my co-teacher on the podcast was, if you can learn the structures of comedy and you can apply the structures of comedy on a daily basis consistently with your friends, and your friends start saying, dude, you're funny. Are you not funny? And that reminds me of a story, quick story. A student came to me a long time ago. His name is Brano, B-R-A-N-O, Brano. Not like in, the paper towel. What's the name of that paper towel? Brawny, right? So a lot of people confuse his name for that. So Brano, who's a big guy, 6'2", 6'3", stocky 270, maybe I'll give him a benefit of the doubt. Let's say 250. Brano's just a big solid dude, right? Croatian. And he came to me a while back and he says, my father told my brother and I, don't laugh. It makes you look stupid. So our whole lives, we don't laugh. But now I'm older. My nephews, they're funny. They're being funny. They're telling stories. They're laughing. I want to be able to participate. Can you teach me to be funny? And I said, you're a lost cause. Then he said, you're joking me. And I said, I am joking you. I think I could help you. So Brano started taking classes with me. Now, Brano's goal wasn't really to do stand-up comedy. He wanted to learn to tell funny stories. So I said, stand-up is your best option. Get in here and learn the structures of what applications you can use to trigger laughter. Now, Brano, considering that English was his second or third language, he did speak Canadian. That's English with a lot of apology. But he came to class religiously. This guy was there every session. He took classes for 3 years. And after about 2.5 years or so, he started going around doing mics around town in LA. And people who were organizing these mics, who have been doing it for a long time, were saying, you're a really good writer. You're funny. And I said, Brano, you should be very happy about that. And he says, it's going to make me happy when I could be funny around my colleagues and my friends. So I said, okay, keep doing your thing. Eventually, you keep writing jokes. You keep applying the structures. It's going to become a part of you. And you'll start doing it, quote, naturally. Just as you learn to write better, you learn to speak better. Same thing's happening here, right? You learn to be a better speaker. You learn to be a better writer. Writing begets writing. Speaking begets speaking. The better you speak, the more you practice, the better you get. Same thing. This is an instrument. We learn to play this instrument. The more you practice it, the better it becomes. So Brano kept practicing. One of the more common techniques in comedy is called incongruity. It's actually the original definition of a joke, which comes from Aristotle, who said that a definition of a joke is two dissimilar ideas converging. So a lot of times we see those in everyday life. For example, if you see a sign that says authentic Chinese cuisine, se habla español, you're thinking, how authentic can it be if they're speaking Spanish? Yeah, I'll have the chicken chow mein with a dirty Sanchez. Two dissimilar ideas converging can get you to a joke. So if you just look at if they don't belong together, how can you make them together? Sort of a mashup, if you will. So Brano takes this idea and he starts running with it. And he starts identifying it in everyday life. Then one time he showed up to a showcase we had at one of our nights, comedy nights. We came to a showcase and he says, "Can I give you a hug?" And I said, "Do you feel strongly about it, Brano?" And he says, "I do." So I said, he gave me a hug. And I said, "What was the hug for?" He said, "You changed my life." And I said, how did I change your life? And he says, "Well, I was walking on campus with a couple of administrators and a couple of teaching colleagues, and I saw one of those kiosks, and it had a poster in it that said, 'Domestic Violence Workshop, Wednesday, February 14th, 7 p.m.' And I said, 'That's funny.' And my colleague said, 'Why is that funny, Brano?' And I said, 'Domestic Violence Workshop on Valentine's Day. Show your wife you love her. Don't punch her in the face.' And they laughed and they said, 'When did you become funny, Brano?' So when my colleagues said I was funny, that's what made me feel like that changed my life. I was able to now identify things and play the humor in those things because I learned how incongruity worked. I learned how wordplay works. I learned how to create an assumption and shatter the assumption. I learned how to use surprise, superiority, simple truth to get laughs. And now it's happening more naturally because I've applied it doing the stand-up and the open mics, and now I see it in life." He said, "So yes, you changed my life." I said, "Well, Brano, I just gave you the tools. You changed your life." But my point is this. Brano, who came to me and said he was unfunny, learned to be funny. And he learned by applying himself and doing lots of work to get there. And he became sort of naturally funny. Another guy, Robert, came to me. He's Austrian. And he started to learn the structures. And he was a director. And he invited me to his office, and he had all the structures laid out on his desk, all on 3x5 cards, and he would sort of practice them and apply them and learn to write with them. Once that became a part of his vernacular and a part of his just sort of every day, he'd start seeing these things around. Even his friends came to me and said, "What did you do to Robert? He's now funny." So I'm not saying he's funny. They're saying he's funny. Because let's face it, the audience is always the final judge. So when he learned these structures and applied them, he was now learning to be funny. Now, this video is going to be part of a series of videos I'm putting out about learning to be funny. Not just being a stand-up comedian, but learning to be funny in life, in conversation, at work, at parties, with friends, with enemies. I mean, that's really why I started learning comedy when I was younger, is to avoid getting my ass kicked. So anyway, I'm going to go over some quick techniques in each of the videos to show you how you could use certain techniques to be funny. First of all, a little background in comedy. You got to learn something about the 13 comedy structures and the 9 psychological laughter triggers. The 9 psychological laughter triggers are the reasons why the brain induces laughter, right? These are what trigger the brain to tickle at something, to giggle at something, right? Now, there's 2 different mechanisms going on in the brain. One is logical. The other one is emotional. So when we hear something, we logically put it together. And then when we're surprised or we can't figure out two things that, wait a second, oh, that is true. When we're hit by certain laughter triggers, then that brain signals the body to create laughter. So laughter comes seconds or a half second or nanoseconds after the logic happens. So two different things have processes happening in the brain. But first, we have to learn the psychological laughter triggers. And those triggers are as follows. They're surprise, embarrassment, recognition, incongruity, superiority, release, configurational, coincidental, and ambivalence. So I think that's 9. I think I got them all. Once we have all of these laughter triggers and we have an idea of what works, let's just focus on surprise and superiority and recognition. These are 3 are probably most commonly used, right? Now that we understand the laughter triggers, we need to understand sort of the disposition of the humorist or the comedian. And the main disposition that comedians have is the cynic. We're cynical people. We like to prove things wrong. We like to take the authority and prove it wrong. We like to take a perceived authority, like a commercial, a spokesperson, a principal, a congress member, and perceived a quote, a fact that we hear, and that's a perceived person of authority who's saying that fact. Now we take that fact, if we prove it wrong, because of the superiority laughter trigger, high odds that the audience is going to laugh. So one of the phrases I want you to start to learn and think about all the time is the phrase "as opposed to." Just think of this phrase, "as opposed to." It's part of your cynical point of view, your comedic glasses that you're wearing, if you will, as opposed to. Every time you hear something from a perceived place of authority, I want you to find a way to prove it wrong. This could be with slogans, cliches, book titles, movie titles. Find a way to prove it wrong. So think of the phrase "as opposed to." Like in certain commercials, you might hear the phrase "carefully selected." We only use carefully selected prime beef, as opposed to frivolously selected, or I don't really give a shit selection process. It's like we don't really choose our meat. We just run over it, scrape it up, and serve it. You know, it's we don't select at all. It's a random choice. So you could take that "carefully selected" and turn it on its head and prove it wrong. Here's another phrase. We're using all available resources, as opposed to all unavailable resources. We'd like to use all available resources, but they weren't available, so we chose just to fly by the seat of our pants. You see what I'm getting at right now? And as you practice these techniques and listening to these phrases and using "as opposed to," you'll hear opportunities in other ideas, and not like commercials. Jerry Seinfeld used this. This is where I first learned this technique. Is Jerry Seinfeld used this in a joke, and the joke was a commercial for laundry detergent. He said, "Laundry detergent, our detergent gets bloodstains out of your dress shirts better than the leading detergent." Well, if you got bloodstains in your dress shirts, you got more things to worry about than laundry detergent. See, that's a way of taking "as opposed to" and applying it to prove that particular thing wrong in a way. Now, here's a very interesting piece of information. When Jerry Seinfeld first did that joke, he did it like I said it. We get bloodstains out of your dress shirts better than the leading detergent. Then, over the years, he changed it. He removed that word, dress. We get bloodstains out of your shirts better than the leading detergent. Now, I think that dress shirts is really important because you can get bloodstains on your shirt. If you're playing football, you're playing hockey, you're playing soccer, you could fall, you take a spill, you get hit in the face, you might get a bloody nose. You could get a bloodstain on a shirt, no problem. But a dress shirt, that really heightens the expectation for you not to get bloodstains on it. So it really makes it sort of a incongruous idea if you have a dress shirt and you've got blood stains on it. So I think he actually kind of killed that joke a little bit as that joke evolved in order to create some sort of like expediency or efficiency in the joke. He trimmed the fat, but I think he trimmed a very crucial word here, which was dress shirt. Now, but that's the video is not about taking apart that joke. It's about taking the idea of when a commercial makes a claim for something, about you thinking like a cynic and applying it towards your own life. Here's another example. I was driving to a gig, and I had the radio on, and I heard a commercial. And it was like, if you want to lose 20 or more pounds legitimately, call 1-800-555-1212. And I'm like, if you want to lose 20 or more pounds legitimately, as opposed to illegitimately? Because if you're losing 20 or more pounds illegitimately, isn't that pretty much a back alley abortion? So you see, you could take a perceived term or perceived claim of authority and then turn it on its head using the cynicism, especially with collocations, because you could use the phrase as opposed to. So that one little technique right there, thinking like a cynic and using the phrase as opposed to, will start helping you become a better, funnier person, because you're using surprise, you're using superiority, you're using recognition of these phrases that we've heard before, and you're playing them against the authority that's using them in the first place. So you got that superiority going on, right? So just a little technique you can apply. Start listening to commercials, start reading, start looking at claims and phrases and proving them wrong, and see if it doesn't help you become funnier. So like I said, this is just the first video in a series of videos I'll be putting out talking about the broad concept of learning to be funny. So this will fit for everybody. Being funny at school, being funny with friends, being funny at work, being funny in a text, being funny in a conversation, be at a meeting, using humor. How do we use humor? How do we use appropriate humor in learning to be funny overall in life? I hope this video brought you some value in your day. And I look forward to the next video. We'll be discussing another technique that you can apply in your everyday usage to learn to be funny. Look forward to your comments. Go ahead and leave them in below. I know a lot of you are going to think, oh, you can't learn this. But trust me, I've got case study after case study that shows you can. And do yourself a favor, get that negativity out of your life and start applying to maybe there's a possibility to learn something and learn to be funny. I'll talk to you soon. See you later.